the big news yesterday, we led our show with it, that Pete Rose being taken off the permanently ineligible list, along with Shoeless, Joe Jackson, and 7 others, many of them for the Chicago Black Sox of 1919. The man who broke that story from ESPN, Don Van Natta, Jr., ESPN senior writer, back here on the Rich Eisen Show. Good to see you, Don. How are you?
Doing great, Rich. Great to be with you.
So walk me through the decision by Commissioner Rob Manfred as you know it, Don.
Well, Jeffrey Lenkoff, the lawyer for Pete Rose and the Rose family, had been pushing for this since 2015. This is a long time coming. And I think people have overlooked that Rob Manfred had an opportunity to put Pete Rose back into baseball in December of 2015. Manfred met with Rose. Rose lied to Manfred in that meeting. Rose said to Manfred, "I'm not betting on baseball anymore," when in fact he was. He corrected himself. And for that reason, Manfred rejected that reinstatement application. So as Lenkoff says, this was a long time coming, but obviously the decision coming 7 months after Pete's death at the age of 83 last September has raised eyebrows. Why did Manfred wait so long? Rose predicted repeatedly in the last few years of his life, including with an interview that I did with him back in 2019 for ESPN, that it was very likely that he was going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame after his death. And he said, "What good does that do me? How am I going to know? I mean, the Hall of Fame is for Pete to have a single day in Cooperstown." And the timing of it certainly raises questions. I think if you were to ask the commissioner would say Rose was his own worst enemy, and the door was open slightly to Rose getting back into baseball multiple times, going back to 2015, again in 2022 when he had a visit in Philadelphia and said some things that upset a lot of people at that event in August of 2022. And the commissioner and the people around him would say that Rose really did this to himself. But the decision now, 7 months after the fact, and the decision that Manfred made, which is historic, it's unprecedented, saying anybody who is on an ineligible list is off the list at the time of their death. Of course, it affects Shoeless Joe Jackson most notably, who certainly deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, as does Pete Rose, is really noteworthy.
So
and important.
I guess then why now, right? Why announce it here in the middle of May of 2025, Don?
Last December, on December 17th, Manfred in his office in Midtown Manhattan met with Jeffrey Lenkoff, the Rose lawyer, and Fawn Rose, Rose's daughter. And that's really where the momentum started growing. Again, 3 months after Pete Rose's death. And then on January 8th, Lenkoff filed that petition. And I think finally, Manfred, who comes to decisions painstakingly slow, as we know, it took him years to adapt the pitch clock and all sorts of rules changes that have certainly turbocharged fan interest in Major League Baseball. He was very, very slow to coming to this decision too, and finally made it yesterday. To your point, it does appear as if it's scripted, right? That on the eve of Pete Rose night, at Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati, where Rose's lawyer will be and his family will be, this decision comes down. That's certainly very, very curious. And of course, the Reds playing the White Sox, the opponents in the 1919 World Series that was fixed by the Black Sox is certainly curious. But Manfred, I had reported back in 2020, Rich, that Manfred, for all intents and purposes, believed that once you pass away, you're no longer on the ineligible list. I broke that story for ESPN in January of 2020. Again, why it took Rob Manfred, 5 years and a few months to come to that decision, it raises the question of whether MLB really didn't want Rose to have a day in Cooperstown. And now finally, after his death, it's looking like he might get one.
Well, maybe on Pete Rose night with the White Sox in after this announcement in Cincinnati, Don, they should have some sort of ceremony where there's official reinstatement for Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson after 2 2/3 innings. They stopped the game because at that point in time, the White Sox will have had 8 men out. Don, right? Like we can,
I like that.
like, let's keep going.
Excellent.
Let's keep going. If these decisions are made for marketing purposes, let's just keep going, right? We'll have
I
8
like
men
that,
out,
Rich.
and
That's a
then
great idea. Yeah. The John Sayles movie. Let's get that.
It's
Let's
so
get
awesome.
that back. It's
By
such
the
a
way,
great movie. I love that movie. Yeah,
it
we both love it. We've talked about it. Yeah, it's fantastic.
You know, and I was talking to my baseball nut of a 14-year-old son last night about all of this when he's like, Dad, was Shoeless Joe Jackson good? And, you know, I couldn't basically say, other than the fact that, yes, he was great and he should be in the Hall of Fame. I couldn't point out to him that one of the reasons why he should be in the Hall of Fame is the World Series he was accused of helping throw. He hit 375, the only home run of the World Series, didn't commit an error. He's like the worst tanker in the history, worst guy on the take in the history of guys on the take. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So
that's right. He had 12 hits and, you know, he played his heart out. And there has been a campaign for years going back to the 90s in particular for Shoeless Joe Jackson. The legislature in South Carolina was petitioning Major League Baseball. This is a footnote that a lot of people don't realize. So John Dowd, who did the Rose investigation, the famous Dowd report, also was asked by Bart Giamatti to investigate Shoeless Joe Jackson, of whether Giamatti should take Jackson off the ineligible list. And Dowd concluded absolutely he should, and recommended that to Giamatti before he did the Rose investigation. And Giamatti didn't choose to do that. All these years later, finally, Shoeless Joe will get his opportunity. But no one deserves it more than Shoeless Joe and Pete Rose getting plaques in the Hall of Fame. You know, Jackson hit 356. It's the fourth best batting average in MLB history. And obviously Rose, the all-time hit king, you know, so many records. He liked to say that he was the winningest person to ever play professional sports in American history. He won 1,972 games. You know, 56 hits. I mean, everything about Rose, and just Charlie Hustle, the greatest nickname probably in all of sports. And finally, I think it's looking likely. And I want to be careful about that. We can talk about that, Rich, if you like, of this committee, because the committee is some former players, executives, and a few media people on this 16-person committee that will likely decide the fate of Rose and Jackson, whether they finally get plaques in Cooperstown.
Well, let's get into that, Don Van Natta Jr. here on the Rich Eisen Show, because to mix sports metaphors here, the Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum in Cooperstown, New York is officially on the clock. And the committee that will consider Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson, just named two, for enshrinement, will not vote on the list of players that needs to be compiled in the meantime until December of 2027. Is there any groundswell to speed this process up, that these guys have waited long enough? Their fans certainly have waited long enough, and family. Well, what do you think, Don?
Well, that's certainly what Jeff Lenkoff, the Rose family lawyer, is pushing for. When I spoke to him yesterday, he said he's going to petition the Hall immediately for them to vote sooner, preferably during this upcoming offseason. Now, whether they choose to do that or not, I believe that's up to the historical committee first, that first has to forward the nominees to the baseball era committee that will ultimately decide. That's the 16-member committee. 12 people have to vote, so 75% of that committee has to approve it. But we'll see if there's a groundswell. I know that Jeff Lenkoff and the Rose family would like it to happen sooner rather than later. They've been fighting for a long time for this, and they don't want to have to wait another 2.5 years for a decision.
I'm just reading from your article about the Historical Overview Committee will be voting on it, but the Classic Baseball Era Committee will be the one voting on it. The Historical Overview Committee has to develop the ballot of names. And I mean, come on. I mean, there should be, now that this is removed, I mean, there shouldn't be any question here. So the question I have, Don, is you mentioned plaque, okay? And I know Costas has been the forefront of this in many venues over the last several years. Let Pete in, put on the plaque that he was suspended, put on the list for gambling and what he did. Just put on the plaque as part of his story what he did and what baseball did with him for it. Does that still maybe even hold water with this ban being lifted? And who's to decide what's on the plaque, Don? Do we know?
I believe I actually don't know the answer to that, Rich. It's an excellent question. I assume somebody attached to the hall decides that, whether there'll be a line. I agree with Costas. I've said before as well that that's the way to solve this. Another suggestion is that you have a sort of a wing of the hall, a wing of infamy or infamous players.
Oh, gosh.
that you have to move Ty Cobb over there. There's quite a few people that already have plaques, right? That would have to be moved over to that hall, that infamous hallway.
Let me just say this, Don. That would be one of the worst decisions ever if there's now a propriety committee, right? Like, and who's to decide, who should be in the hall of shame, if you will? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, but putting something on a plaque, now that's a different story. And I think that's part of the story to tell, because this entire time, Rose was ineligible from, as he would always point out, he couldn't talk to young hitters at a stadium. He was banned from baseball activities. It really was the Hall of Fame's doing to basically say that includes us. I mean, baseball's never really instructed Cooperstown what to do, right?
You're absolutely right, Rich. So in 1989, when Bart Giamatti came up with an agreement, it was an agreement that he struck with Rose and his lawyers, that Rose was going to accept this indefinite penalty of being out of baseball. The expectation that Rose had, and he said this repeatedly during his life, is he thought it was going to be 1 or 2 years, and then Giamatti was going to let him back in. Now, Giamatti insisted that Rose was going to have to reconfigure his life. That's that key language that Manfred looked at in 2015. And you could argue that Rose did not reconfigure his life because he denied betting on baseball for 15 years. It wasn't until 2004 when he wrote that book that he finally admitted something that was so obvious if you read the Dowd report. But, I think that putting a line in the plaque that Rose was banned for baseball for all these years is absolutely the right way to go. You put a line in Shoeless Joe's plaque, the same thing, that, Jackson was banned in 1921. Think about that, 104 years ago by Kennesaw Mountain Landis, the first commissioner of baseball, who was literally hired to investigate the Black Sox scandal and knocked 8 of those Black Sox players out of baseball for their entire lives. You put a line in his plaque, and that's certainly the way to do it. You said it so well earlier, Rich. It's not just the Hall of Fame. It's a Hall of Fame and museum. And when you go there in Cooperstown, Rose is everywhere. There's posters. There's bat from his 44-game hitting streak. Rose is there. He's present, except in the hall with the plaques. And so one way to do it, since it is a museum and it should actually record baseball history, is you put a line or two at the very end of that plaque. There's a lot of stats that are going to have to go on both those guys' plaques, but you put one line or a line and a half summarizing the ban from baseball and why it happened.
All right, let's talk a little football, Don Van Natta, before I let you go. Can you do me a favor and investigate who's leaking all this stuff for the schedule release? Can that, can I give you an assignment? Can I send you on this? Like, what's going on here? I had to sign an NDA because, by the way, I don't know if you're aware, because you do know a lot. You know where a lot of paperwork's coming from, Don. I have been deemed by the National Football League mission critical for tonight's schedule release. Yes, that's because I got an NDA. The schedule is given to only a select few on the executive flow chart, and it's up to them to deliver it to others in the NFL who are deemed mission critical. That's me.
Wow.
But it's good. What's going on, Don? Can you look
Next
into this
to that
for me?
best dad ever, you need mission critical.
Well, a
little sign there, right?
Show Don. Show Don. See, this is.
Okay.
It's a movie in theaters this summer called Mission Critical. That's me in my best, CSI Miami, David Cruz.
Like it.
But what are you working on with the NFL right now, Don? I know you always are. What are you working on that you're willing to share?
I wish I could tell you about the current project. It's one I'm really excited about, working on with my colleague Seth Wickersham. It's coming soon. But I'm also on the side working on the Jerry Jones biography, which I'm really excited about.
Okay.
To be entitled "The Star," and so I've been working on that as well.
Why?
Yeah, that's going to come out.
Okay, then
next year.
Let me ask this: Why does he always pay players late? Don, why does he not take care of guys that we all know sitting on our couches at home, that they're Cowboys for life as long as they keep playing the way that they do? That he he lets others set the market before he acts and winds up paying top dollar. Don, do you have that sense?
It's inexplicable. No, it's pure stubbornness. It's the way he's always done it. You're not going to teach the old dog new tricks. And I agree. He costs his team money every single time he does it. He hurts himself against the salary cap. It doesn't work. You would think that Stephen or other folks around him would advise not to do it, but that's the way Jerry's always done it, and that's the way he prefers to do it. And it's counterproductive to the team, managing of the salary cap. It's a problem. I
just didn't know if, investigating his life, it was, that's what his dad did when he was a kid. He didn't get it. You know what? He waited to give Jerry his weekly allowance until the last second, and Jerry would just say, but my friend around the corner is making more than what you're giving me. And then all of a sudden he would get, I just don't know if it's like something deep seated in his childhood, Don. I just don't know.
I wish I could draw a through line from Jerry's father, the unbelievable story of his father. I'm having so much fun with that portion of the book. There's a lot of lessons Jerry learned from his father that he actually implements and follows to this day. But that's not one of them, unfortunately. I wish I could find. I wish I could find evidence, but there's quite a few others that I think will surprise people. Of the Pat Jones, his dad's name was Pat. He was a grocer in North Little Rock, as big a showman, or even a bigger showman, if it's possible to believe, than Jerry. And he plays an outsized role in my book, because obviously he plays an outsized role in Jerry's life, even to this day. Thinks about him, talks about his dad all the time. And but no, I can't. I haven't found evidence for that yet, Rich, but I'll keep looking.
Is that what's led Jerry to potentially win his first Emmy for his appearance in Landman, talking about family and the importance of family, Don?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, the Landman clip is that's really Jerry. That's truly Jerry. He had no script. They sat him down, and I've heard him tell that story almost word for word to me, sitting in his office at the Star. And that's Jerry Jones, unplugged. He tears well up in his eyes often when he talks about his father, his mother, his upbringing, the lessons they taught him, as well as being able to work with his 3 children and how important that is to him. That is really Jerry. That's not Jerry the showman, or Jerry Mr. Sizzle. That's Jerry. Really, the heart and soul of him is that, and working with his family is one of the most important things to him. And he should win the Emmy. He was fantastic in that scene, and he was the best thing about it. Did you see the whole series? I did.
I love it.
I thought it was really good too. But I thought that was the best scene. Well, he stole the series.
I had no idea he was showing up. Neither did my wife. We're watching it together. We watched that scene a second time. We're like, oh my God. And by the way, that's John Hamm and that's Billy Bob in the same scene with him. And he dominated. Again, that's
he took those 2 incredible actors to school, exactly, and you could see the awe on their face, right, Rich? I mean, they were like, wow, we're in the presence of greatness. I often say about Jerry, he is one of the best, if not the best, storytellers I've come across in my journalism career. I've been a journalist now 35 years, and there's no one better telling stories, and you just sit rapt listening to him. Sometimes it's the same story. You will hear you will hear he forgets sometimes. He's told me the story 5, 6, 7 different times, but he will tell it slightly differently. But he is an incredible storyteller, and that storytelling ability has been basically adopted by the National Football League. It's now a 365-day-a-year league, as we know. A lot of that is because of Jerry's ability to tell a great story, and they dominate the sports calendar. And Jerry, as I'll point out in the book in many different ways, is a big reason for that. He's an architect in so many ways of the astonishing success of the National Football League.
Well, speaking as a 22-year now and counting employee of the NFL Network, Don, Pat Bowlen, Jerry Jones, Robert Kraft, 3 crucial owners in the creation and nurturing of NFL Network to this point. Before I let you go, I got about 2 minutes here. I told my guys were arguing with me. They think the NFL should institute the draft lottery like the NBA does. I said it'll never happen. They think I'm out of my mind. You know NFL membership better than most. Do you really think the NFL would ever institute a draft lottery like the NBA does and the rest of Major League Baseball and the NHL, Don?
It's a great question. I think there is certainly a chance of it, but let me back up first. There are the old school owners are not going to want to mess with success, and this is the way the draft has been done forever. Pete Rozelle used to do it, on a whiteboard way back in the '60s, and how it's grown is remarkable. However, if there is a way to monetize it, if you can put a sponsor on the draft, on the draft lottery, or some way to make more money, I would bet that is something that the NFL owners will consider doing, because that is what they are constantly looking for. I mean, we're looking now at a $25 billion a year business that has grown remarkably. And the reason it's grown like that is because any chance to monetize any aspect of the sport, the NFL owners embrace. And so if there's a way to monetize it, Rich, they'll make it happen.
Brought to you by Powerball. You know what I mean? I listen.
Yes.
The reason why that it makes that much money, among many reasons, is because I think the fan bases are into it because they feel like their team's never out of it, because they can hit the figurative lottery by drafting a player high. I just don't think it would be insane, I think, for the NFL to attempt to do something like that. But
I agree, and I say it tongue in cheek, but you're right. The secret sauce of the NFL's success is parity. There's no question,
Yeah.
And that's was invented by Pete Rozelle. Tex Schramm had a lot to do with it as well. It's just, any given Sunday, have every team have a chance to win, and every year have that hope spring eternal. And the draft is obviously so hardwired into that idea that parity is what makes the league so successful that, I would be surprised if they mess with success, even if they can monetize it.
Don, you're the man. Love our chats. Always look for more of my texts to say, hey, great job. Nice scoop. Come on. Let's talk about it. Thanks, Don. Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.